My name is Ian Skelly, and I'm a missionographer. I have traveled all over the world documenting the lives of missionaries. I've heard their amazing stories of faith and adventure. They are people who would dare to trust God and witness the impossible. Here are some of their stories.
Hey guys, I am here in beautiful Pensacola, Florida. We're out sailing and I'm with Tino and Sara.
Yes.
Gutierrez.
There you go.
And you guys are missionaries to Mexico.
Yes.
And we're just out here enjoying this beautiful weather.
Yes,
right?
it's beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, welcome, and we wanted to hear some of your stories, some of the things that have happened in your missionary adventure. Maybe some things that you haven't necessarily shared a whole lot of in front of audiences, but just to hear kind of those untold truths, you know, that all missionaries have. And so, tell me, how did you guys meet?
I met my husband Tino at the church in Palm Beach area. See, and we got married not too long after that. 2 years after that, we got married. And since then, we've been married. We've been together.
Oh boy.
It's 37 married and 2 years that we dated 2 years. So that's 37, 38, 39 years together. It's a long time.
That's a long time.
It's a long, long time.
Yeah, my name is Tino Gutierrez. I got saved back in 1979, a small Nazarene church. The Lord had been dealing with me concerning my life, what I was going to do with my life, and finding myself in a place where I needed to confront areas of my life. So God began to deal with me, and right after He came into my heart, I really sensed a call to the world, a call to begin to serve Him. And so we pursued our preparation and studies in the Word in Pensacola, Florida, here in Liberty Bible College, and then from there we sent out as missionaries to the world, in this case to Latin America, precisely into Mexico, and into the city of Guadalajara in 1988. And from there, God has been expounding on our ministry from children's feeding programs that we've started. We've started 3 of them. We are also in our 3rd church plant right now. And we are also work with what we call a ministerial covering for pastors and churches in and around Mexico, and some are here in the U.S., and mainly Latin churches. And we've also worked in international ministry, where we do outreach, evangelistic work outside of the Western Hemisphere and in the Western Hemisphere. So that's exciting. We're glad to be a part of something great.
After I got saved, I thank the Lord because my pastor believe in me, and for some reason he put us together, and the Lord, I started sensing that the Lord was calling me to Bible school to get trained to do God's work, and there was some things that I have kind of doubts in me, and but thank the Lord that He was there, and He hear me every time I have any questions. So it's then another time, but not too long after that, the Lord brought us here to Pensacola, and me and my husband took some classes in Liberty Bible College that time, and so then after that, I knew that the Lord wanted us to do more for Him, work more straight for His kingdom. And always in my heart, I want to stay here in the States, not to go back to Mexico anymore, because life is different, and I was happy here. But my husband, he wasn't happy. He wants to go. And the thing in my mind, I always thought that I'm not going to live with a happy man in my life. So then a man came to me. He don't know anything about me, and the Lord gave him a word for me, and He told me that the Lord was saying that he was going to take me back to Mexico, to my people. And then when he told me that, I was real shocked. I know he was the Lord because this man, he never met me before. He don't know nothing about me. So then it's when the Lord started preparing my heart. I was very, in my heart, I was very tied to the things that I have, material things we used to have in our home. And I knew that I was gonna have to leave everything behind. And I was concerned about my kids too. They were small. And I know how life is in Mexico. It's different. And a lot of times what I learned is that we concern for about so many things, and for the kids, it's nothing. It's like when we arrive in Mexico, a few days after that, they have lots of friends. All the kids from our street, they were their friends. They were playing together. They were doing things together, and I was like, "Oh Lord!" I was so concerned about that. And for you, it was like nothing. It was nothing for the Lord. He was good to us, and He's been good.
Well, in your perspective, as a man, normally, you are put in a place where you lead, and you're conscientious, and you try to be sensitive to your needs of your children, your wife. But because I've been a visionary, and it was just in my heart, in my spirit, man, to see what God was going to be doing concerning missions. And so I was willing to drag my family around the world and wherever it was going to be necessary for us to accomplish that vision. And I really didn't have to drag them. God spoke to Sara finally, and so we went ahead and decided to go ahead and move. And my kids, Sara, we traveled into Mexico in that first in the month of July of 1988. And as we traveled in there, our truck broke down. We had an old truck that was donated to our ministry, and it was kind of like a rust bucket. We didn't have a lot of money, and so we're stuck in the mountains there in Monterrey, Mexico. And these green angels came by and they helped us out. And they got the truck going again. So we just got on our way, and God would always make a way where there wasn't no way. And so that's been our story ever since we started missions. And my kids saw that. My wife knew that. We knew that. And so that's why our kids fell in love with the God that we served. And now they're not only missionary kids. Now they're obviously working in a pastoral role. They're working in ministry. They're working as coordinators, directors for different programs that we have there in Mexico. So they're doing a great job. We're happy. We're proud of them.
So God called you to Mexico, and being there, maybe some of the uncertainty. Can you tell us some stories about maybe something that happened where God, you were in a situation where God really had to come through, and He did for you?
Our first story is about when we were ministering in the outskirts of Guadalajara, Mexico, and it was already night. We had finished the service, and we had ministered under the power of God. It was wonderful. It was great. And I was loading up my sound system that we normally would take out to the streets and these different areas and out to the missions. And we were in one of those missions out there, and there was very, very low lights. The streets were dirt roads, and I saw these guys that didn't look very nice at that time. And as I was loading, all of a sudden the pastor had, the brother, the leader there, had shut off all the lights in the church, so I didn't have a lot of lighting, and I had to still load some stuff in my van. And those guys were still, again, looking at us. And so I loaded everything on the vehicle, on the van. I closed doors real quick, and I was already kind of a little bit scared. I said, man, these guys can come up on me, and I know they can take everything I got and beat me up. And so as I crawl into the van, lock the doors, I began to pray. And as I began to pray, I remembered not too long ago from that time, the Lord had confirmed in my heart that there will always be angels around our ministry. And as I'm sitting there, I'm driving in these dirt roads, trying to get out of that area. And I remember driving, and whether you believe it or not, I learned to pray in tongues. and because I was kind of scared, to be honest with you. I was praying in tongues. They didn't pray in Spanish. Couldn't even pray in English. So I was praying in tongues, and as I was praying, I was driving, and all of a sudden, I just felt like a release. I came to a certain area, drove out of that area, came to another area there in the city, and then I got home about 10 o'clock that night, unloaded my stuff off the van into our missions home, and went to bed late. And the next morning, we're sitting there. Sarah made me this delicious Mexican breakfast. I mean, it was incredible. Okay, and then we had this young guy came by our house, a good friend of ours, lived nearby there, and knocked on the door. We opened it. He walked in and said, his name was Omar. Omar, come on, have some breakfast with us. So he's sitting there. He's asking me, hey, Brother Tino, you always got people coming in from the States. He go, yeah. Once in a while, we got people coming in. He said, hey, last night, my friend was eating tacos at the taco stand, the one here by the corner by your house. He said he saw you drive in your van. I go, yeah, about what time? About 10 o'clock. Yeah, that was me. He says, he asked me, who were those gringos that were in the van with you? Gringos? I said, well, describe them to me. What did he say? Yeah, he said that the guy in the front had blonde hair, but he had long blonde hair. He's a big guy. He was sitting in the front seat. And then the other guy, because he had got a bench seat in the back, he was leaning over, and his hair was a little bit darker. But he was leaning over, and you can see his hair falling, up as he was leaning over, and they were talking to you. He says, those visitors from the States? I said, no, dude, I was by myself. I was by myself, man, but I was going through a situation. It was kind of like, I needed to have somebody in that vehicle. So I'll tell you who they were. I said they were angels of God. They were with us at that moment, and I'm telling you, bro, it was incredible because that young man who saw these angels, he wasn't even saved, and he saw them, and so that moral of the story is that we trust God, and He sends His angel and encamps around those that fear Him, and so that's one of those stories.
Yeah, that's incredible because it seems like for me that the time that God really answers prayer is when it's at the point where He's got to, Yeah. And I just have just one story I always remember when I was in Kenya with missionary Sherry Thompson, and I spent the night in the boys' dorm. It was midnight, and all the boys had these little wind-up radios, and it was they were all on a different station, and it was so noisy, and I was like, God, I'm so tired. And it was dark. It was complete dark. I couldn't see anything. I said, I'm so tired. I need to get some rest because I got to film in the morning. And I'm like, can you please do something about these radios? And as soon as I finished that prayer, everything went quiet. And I'm like, I was almost too tired to be amazed. And I told that story one time, and a friend said, well, I wonder if the radios stopped or if God just plugged your ears, So you never know those things. So Sara, was there a story that you have where you think that you know that God came through for you?
When we decided to go to Mexico, the soon we decided to go, we walk into ¿cómo se dice? Sobrenatural?
Into the supernatural.
Into the supernatural lifestyle, and we've been seeing lots and lots of miracles in finances, healings, provide things that we need for the ministry, for our home, for our kids. It's a lot of fun when you live that kind of lifestyle, because you see God's hand over and over and over. The way He comes through to the situation. Doesn't matter how big or how small it is. The Lord is nothing for Him to do what you ask Him to do. And so there's been a lot of fun times when I'm being in need of a clothes or tennis or makeup or whatever, and I come to the States, and every single time the Lord always provides through people. They don't know anything, but the Lord speaks to them and they obey Him. And I'm very amazed myself. I said, Lord, you know exactly what we need. And the time when you wanna, it's time for you to provide for us. I don't know, I have a little hard time to explain, but God is good. He's been good. And just so many things that we can write books and books and books of things that he's been doing for us.
Yeah, that's good. So let me ask you this, because you've been guys that been on the field for how long?
29 years.
29 years. So you've had those high moments, and no doubt you've had those low moments where you're like, let's say it, in depression, you know, maybe where are you, God, kind of thing. Think about some stories where you've been in those low moments, how long you were in those low moments, and maybe what you learned and how you came out of those.
You know, people, when they get a certain age, they begin to thank God for their health. When you're young, you never even think about that. But when I was ill, I didn't know I had pancreatitis, and I was still traveling. And I arrived in Mexico, very, very, very ill. I just arrived from Canada, from a trip to Canada, and I was literally dying. And the doctors were checking me, and they couldn't find the what was wrong. And so finally, they rushed me to the hospital there in Aguascalientes, and when they did an ultrasound on my intestines, they found that all kinds of liquids have come loose all around the intestines and the major organs. So they had to do exploratory surgery. And when I was in that hospital during that time, you know, I thought these doctors were butchers because of the way they did things, and they were joking. I remember they couldn't put me down. They couldn't go to sleep. So I could feel a lot of the things they were doing, and they were taking my guts out. They were cleaning it out. I heard a vacuum cleaner. I mean, it was a very bad experience. And all that, I say that because we were praying. And it was one of the low times of in our life, because we had gone into some bad debt. And it had to do with not so much the ministry, but with us of just not being the best of administrators. And I remember talking to God about, I said, God, I'm going to come back to the States, come back to work. And we sat down with Doug Gaiman, our director, and said, hey, he told us, look, in 2 months, if God doesn't do nothing, then you guys come back. I said, okay, fine, that sounds fair enough to me. And so we waited. But during those 2 months is when I got sick. And I was in the hospital remembering that. I said, Lord, those 2 months went by, and now this is getting worse. I got a big debt, and I'm in the hospital here, in Mexican hospital, in the hands of these Mexican doctors, and I don't know what to do. And that's when I really felt very, 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 very hopeless. And just, you can't run, you can't do anything. And lying there, almost dying, I remember all of a sudden when Sara walked in to come and see me after the surgery, I was still alive, believe it or not. After the surgery, the doctor made me walk. They opened me up about a foot in my abdomen, and it was, you know, he made me walk around the hallways of the hospital. And I'm saying, these doctors must be crazy. But as I'm walking, I'm repenting. I'm saying, God, whatever I didn't do right, God, I need you to just help me, because I don't know how to get out of this one. We got a big hospital bill. We got this big debt that we got, and we need help. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, we got an email from this brother up in North Carolina. He said, Tino, I was thinking about you. I just sold my house. And I got an offering that I want to give. It's about $5,000. And we had also just gotten a letter from the bank that says, you know what, if you guys can come up with this amount of money, $5,000, we will forgive your debt. And it would just happen one thing after another. Then we had a pastor come in from Missouri. He said, you know, the brothers gave us an offering to help you with the hospital. And it was the exact amount that we needed to pay for the hospital. I mean, just one thing after, and within, I guess, hours of time, of the timing, God began to supply and to provide in that area. And to say the least, out of that moment of depression, the moment of despair, and I'm just seeing myself in a bed and unable to move, I began to see God's hand just pour out his healing oil and restored my health, restored our finances, restored our, whatever we were going through at that time. It was just, God just miraculously put it together. It was awesome. So it was good.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome, Tino. And I guess that's especially during missions conference times, you know that some missionaries are coming home defeated feeling, and some missionaries are on top, because you have gone through those feelings yourself. And so and that's the good thing about brotherhood too, is that you realize when that another brother is going through that you reach out and comfort and help them as well. Let me kind of wrap up and ask you guys, what would you say to, maybe it's either a young person or it could be an older couple who think that maybe God might be calling them to missions, but they're unsure?
If the Lord is calling you to go to the mission field, you need to go. But if the Lord is not saying you go, you just need to stay here and probably do something else.
Support missions.
Because you can support missions too. But you need to know exactly. I mean, if it's the Lord calling you, don't let your emotions go in the middle, because your emotions, the soon you arrive there, it's going to be very, very difficult for you. Because your emotions are going to leave, and what's going to happen after that? So the emotions come and go, and we cannot live by emotions. We need to make sure there's the Lord calling us into the mission field. And I'm very happy because the Lord called us and He's been supporting us. And one thing that really makes me keep believing is because I see His hand over and over and over. How He when we are in the middle of the problem or in the middle of a trial, He always come through. So I told people, if it wasn't like that for me, I'd probably left this place long time ago. But the Lord always inspired me and say, I'm with you. You just do what I've been telling you to do. Don't do more, don't do less. You just obey me and you'll see what's gonna happen. So I fear the Lord. And I know He's real. He's real. He's become so real in my life and my husband and my kids. And now in my grandkids, we have two grandkids, a boy and a girl. And so He's good. He's been good and faithful.
There was a family that came down years ago and come work with, there in the area we were working at. It was a young missionary family. And right around that, like they were there for about a year, 2 years, their daughter gets killed. And I saw it in their face when they came. They were so excited. The feeling of knowing that they were called and to come and to serve, and then to see their daughter die on the mission field, and then have to go home and return to this country in the U.S. And I thought about that through the years, and I said, Lord, there is no guarantee. Number one, you stay focused. If you're young and you want to serve God, you got to stay focused. Number two, you got to have a conviction that says, you know what, this is what God has called me to do, and this is what I'm going to do. There'll be setbacks, and there'll be turmoil, there'll be discouragements. That's part of the package. But and third is just continue to trust God, in the sense that even though there is not enough finances enough to cover what you're doing in reference to the resources, but who's going to come through, and He always does. 29 years of doing this, we're not poor, we're not rich, and but I've learned to say, God, you are sufficient to get the job done. He works in miraculous ways. He'll speak to people as they're dreaming, they're sleeping. He'll speak to people in visions, and he'll wake up millionaires like he'll wake up the poor. And sometimes the poor will give more, sometimes the rich will give less or give more, whatever. But I've learned to say, you know what, God, if you don't speak to them, and if they don't listen to you, they're not going to help these young missionaries. They're not going to help us. But Lord, we don't depend on them. We depend on you, God. And so I think the key thing, the fourth point is the supernatural. Believe the supernatural. Just see God's hand work, and when it happens, give Him the glory. Give God the glory. Say, God, you're doing it again. You're opening another door. You know, you're providing in this area. You're giving in this area. You're providing vehicles. You're providing money for construction. You're providing food for the poor, for the children that we're tending to. God, you're doing this, and so that's my word for those young couples or young people or couples that are going into the mission field. Man, it's exciting. It's challenging, but it's not for the wimpy of heart. Man, if your heart is weak, don't get into it. You know, don't even think about it. If it's just a feeling, forget it. It ain't gonna happen. Emotion, forget it. But if it's a conviction, then say, God, I'm going with it. And that'll be your life. Then deal with it. Face it and say, God, you're with me. I'm not alone. I'm gonna make it. It's gonna happen. And that's in 29 years. I can tell you that with a true conviction in my heart, and I hold nothing back.
Don't be afraid to do what the Lord wants you to do. If God is with you, who's gonna be against you? Nobody.
Exactly.
Come on.
You're in a safe place.
Yes. Appreciate that. That was good encouragement. And yeah, it's just, it is a life of adventure, but you got to have that moment where you know that God has called you, because when the time gets rough, when the seas get rough, and you're out in the sailboat, you got to have something to anchor you to, right? So we just want to say thank you guys for hanging out with us.
All right.
And as we sail here at Pensacola Bay, and we enjoyed getting to know you guys a little bit better.
Same here.
And many thanks to our wonderful Captain Sinbad over here, doing a great job. And so anyways, we'll catch you guys later, and somewhere else along the world.
Yeah, somewhere.
For missionary stories.
Something good is happening.
Exactly. All right, see you guys. So what's going on here, Tino?
What is going on here? Let me see. Well, there's 37 years of just having to love. You know, it's like, no, it's just take care, Sara. You know, making sure she's doing okay. She don't get burned.
I am very excited.
All right.
And it's gonna be fun.
Yep.
We're gonna have a lot of fun here.